and welcome to the University of Dutch. I'm taking this one, Dutch. I am your co-host, JP John Paz from the Two-Man Power Trip, aka Dr. John. And of course, joining me is the smartest man ever in the history of the business, the Dutchman himself, Dirty Dutch Mantel. Dutch, how you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. I really am. Just to catch the people up, this week, and I've just returned at about 2 o'clock this afternoon from Atlanta, where I was with the creators of Dark Side of the Ring, and they're doing another show. I think it's just called the Territories, and it's really historical in nature because not only will older fans like this because they're familiar with it, but the younger fans can see what the setup was for the the older days of wrestling. We call the older days, but I mean wrestling had roots way before I came along. No, not that much, but it's a they call the territory, so they're taking a look at the old territorial system, which included places like Memphis, like Atlanta, Georgia, and the state of Georgia, which was a territory, the state of Florida, Florida Championship Wrestling, Mid Atlantic, which was the Carolinas and Virginia, and you're familiar with that. They're doing Minnesota, the old Minneapolis Wrestling, and I think they're doing Stampede as of right now. And I think others could be added. So it's and the way uh, my friend Evan Husney, the producer of Dark Side of the Ring, the way he produces these things is really really good because the thing with Memphis is he can actually find a lot of video still from the old Memphis days, and a lot of people don't know this, but we're not we're not purveyors of the future sometimes. A tape in Memphis used to be recycled because we used to piggyback it around to different stations. Say it would be recorded live in Memphis as a 60-minute show out of a 90-minute live show. They would take 60 minutes and put it on the tape that bicycled around, and then we would send that tape, or I wouldn't send it, but the company would send it to Louisville, and then to Evansville, and to Nashville for the next week, and then they would send it other places where the show was syndicated, where I don't know. And those tapes, they were 2-inch tapes back in those days. They're not little things you can just do on your phone and it's video and it's all. Uh, I mean, it's not video in that sense. And then they would take that tape, and I think they back in the day they were like $300 a piece, which was a pretty fair amount to use a tape for one go around, and then it's no good. But they would erase that tape and they would use it again. So if there's, and I told Jerry Jarrett one time, I said, you've erased probably now $1 million worth of history.
At
And he said,
least.
yeah, I wish I'd have known. I wish I'd have known. But anyway, that's where I was today. I just came out about 3 o'clock, and I just got up about 45 minutes ago because my daughter yelled at me, "Hey, you can get up. You gonna do your deal." They call it the deal. You gonna do your deal? I said, yeah, I'm gonna get up. But I was together for the first time, and probably since I finished up Memphis. I was in the same room, same space, same time as Jerry Lawler and as Jimmy Hart, uh, Jeff Jarrett, and Jerry Jarrett. Did I say Jerry Jarrett twice?
Jeff.
I was with four, two Jerrys and Jeff and
Jimmy.
Jimmy Hart. So it was a pretty good get together with those guys. It's been a long time since I've seen them, and I think they had a good time. I enjoyed it too. All right, so any pressing news we need to hit on right now?
Just one question for you, which has been
Uh, Here it
wanted to,
comes.
yeah, against all
Here it is.
odds, 2007,
What's say?
against all odds, 2007,
Yes.
Christian versus Kurt Angle. That people keep wanting to know because we didn't really touch on the episode at the time, which is in the archives. But what about the main event? You had Samoa Joe, Scott Steiner, Tomko all interfere, and it was an all WWF guy main event, Kurt Angle and Christian. What are your thoughts on that match?
Well, can I curse here a little bit?
Yep.
It was a cluster F. You had a lot of run-ins. You had a lot of things happening. So if you look back at it as a whole, what do you really focus on? Who really advanced from this? I would say that it was so confusing. Nobody advanced other than to get more confused. And I didn't book this match. I mean, 2007 is how long ago? 15 years. 15, and we talked about this, not in depth, but some people still want to know what I thought of it. I thought about it as a very forgettable match. Nothing happened to change the landscape of the company. Nothing happened to change the landscape of the booking, and it was just there. Happened to be the main event, and as far as I know, I don't know who did the finish, but I didn't do the finish. I know that because it wouldn't have been so complicated if I'd have done it because I would have. But they could have been a need to involve those other guys. I'm sure there was. That's why they were in there. But I didn't understand it, and it didn't even help us really. I mean, those days we were. This is before the knockouts came. I mean, I don't think enough, and we talked about this, I think a week or so ago, how instrumental the knockouts were in the advancement of TNA as a company, because we added another element, which is a women's division that actually was totally different from the men's division, and I mean even their work rate might have been slower, but it was I think much better. And when you had Amazing Kong or Awesome Kong, who I think is one of the greatest female wrestlers of all time. Now, granted, I don't know a lot of the Japanese girls, but I think she, as far as believability, I think she's number one. You believe this girl, and the way I booked her. The I mean, we're off on another subject now, but I booked her like Abdullah the Butcher, like Indestructible. But if you look at her, she looked indestructible. I mean, I'm sure she could have beat a lot of men. She knew some martial arts and she was tough and she was a big woman. But if you talk to her, her voice never matched her body because she had a little teeny tiny voice. And sweet girl, I love that girl to death. And then when you put Gail Kong into the mix too, if anybody actually even missed on that, they would have to really work at it to miss on Gail Kong and also, I mean Gail Kim and Awesome Kong. So, but okay, there's my thoughts. So let's get rolling on this one. Walk me through it real quick.
TNA Lockdown 2005, April 24th, 2005, Orlando, Florida, TNA Impact Zone.
Was it? When
Sorry?
was it taped?
April 24th, 2005.
Okay. On the sheet you sent me, it said April 28th.
Really? I must have
Well, you calling me a liar or something?
maybe, yeah.
No, it
But
did say April the 20th,
but
which is,
sup- supposedly 30,000 buys.
excuse me, I can't, I'm having a little audio problems here.
Supposedly 30,000 buys on the show too.
Okay. I don't know how you get the figure, but I'm buying it. Okay, on April 24th, it was taped. Folks, this was the last match that Chris Candido ever had. He got hurt on April the 24th, and he came back on the 25th and the 26th, I think, and did two shows, two Impact shows, and then he was living in New Jersey, so against doctor's orders, he went and flew home to New Jersey. And I think he flew back, he landed on the 27th, I think. I'm discovering what it is, John, to be a fact checker. But he landed on the 27th. Then he got ill, and I forgot what he developed. He developed pneumonia and blood clots from flying, and he died on April the 28th, 2005. So, I think he broke his leg. What happened to him, John? You remember?
Yeah, with Sonny Siaki, he ended up breaking his leg.
Yeah. So, but that's actually the only thing that really, I mean, you can talk about on this show because every match was in a cage, right?
Whose whose idea is that? Why?
Do you really want to know?
Yep.
All right, if I gave you, let me take myself out of the equation. If I gave you three candidates, who would you say? Now, you already know the answer.
But I would say Dusty, Russo, or Jarrett. That's the three I would say.
Who would you say his idea it was?
Probably Dusty.
Nope. I'm gonna back it up now. I'm gonna throw another name in there between Jeff, Vince Russo, and Dixie Carter. Who would you say then?
Jeff.
No. Now it's down to two. Okay, Dixie or Vince Russo.
Russo.
You hit for the streak, man. Wrong again. It was actually Dixie Carter. I don't know what happened, but we were debating something in the office one day, and she come in and she kind of got into it, and she says, "Why don't you put every match in the cage?" Well, they've never had an all cage pay per view. So Vince liked it and Jeff liked it, and I don't know whether I liked it or not. I don't think I much liked it, but because it's all the same thing. But we, as a group, we took her opinion and put every match in the cage, and you got what you got on the video you watched. So do you think it was a good idea to put every match in the cage? You're a
I don't
wrestling,
like it. No, I
huh?
don't like it because the main event should be in the cage. You know what I mean? Like the important match, the end of the
Nobody
feud, not
cares.
everybody.
Nobody cares whether you liked it or not. But that's how it came out. The matches weren't bad, but it was a forgettable pay per view, and I mean nobody's gonna even today said, "Hey man, did you see all that all cage pay per view TNA did in 2005?" You know that's words I've never heard before, and it's been 15 years ago. It's, and it's still not catching on. But anyway, anything else stand out to you in this match?
So
On this call?
So Apollo and Sonny Siaki in the first match defeated Candido and Lance Hoyt. The match went 7 minutes. That's where Candido has his last match and breaks his leg. Sonny Siaki actually is the one that breaks his leg.
Mm-hmm. That was it. And so they beat Lance Hoyt. I
And
can't
Chris.
remember.
Yep.
Okay. All right, give me that second match.
Dustin Rhodes defeated Bobby Roode in a Prince of Darkness match. Match went 15 minutes.
Hey, I love Dustin. I love Bobby Roode. I mean, they were great athletes, and but sometimes if you don't run the right play, you could have the greatest running back in the world. But if you don't open a hole for him, where's he going to go? He's going to get tackled. So if you got a breakaway runner, he's got to get away from the pack so he can break out on his own. That was a problem. We needed runners that were like 6'6" and weighed about 110 pounds to get through those little holes we opened. We opened like this much, and they couldn't get through there. But and it's another gimmick match. And this is what I used to say about Vince. Vince, he worked tirelessly, but it had to be tiring to think of all these ideas. Remember, I used to tell that he would take a gimmick and put something else on top of that gimmick and twin brother it up with something else. It's already an all cage pay-per-view. So let's put two guys in an all cage pay-per-view. Let's stack a gimmick on top of a gimmick. Put them in the cage and see what happens. I think for a regular fan, I mean, I think we lost the story. Whatever we had as a story was somehow lost in this whole pay-per-view. But I think didn't Rude beat Dustin?
Dustin wins here, but remember he was in the
Are you
blindfold.
there?
Yeah, but he was in the blindfold. It was very,
Okay.
I don't know, very
You gotta
weird.
help me with this. I remember. See, I just got back in today from Atlanta, so I'm still just a little bit sleepy. All right, give me the next one.
Shocker defeated Chris Sabin, Matt Bentley,
Do you have
and
liquor in there?
Sanjay Dutt. Four-way escape match. Shocker, your boy from Mexico got the win in 16 minutes.
Forgettable. There's another gimmick match, a four-way in a cage. It didn't even fit the purpose of the match at all. So, greeting from Canada, Doug, the guitarist. Okay.
Hey, Doug. Yeah, greetings. Yeah, I'll get that.
Doug,
Nice.
play a guitar. Ask him, can he play a guitar? He calls himself the guitarist.
I would, Doug. Can
He
you play
needs to
guitar?
send
I would
us.
hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Intro music.
what if he was
There you
Doug,
go.
the banjoist, or the violinist?
Then you'd probably love him.
He could be that. All right.
Jeff Hardy defeats.
You know, I always wanted to play the violin.
Why?
You know, we don't call them violins down south. Hell, I don't know. They just don't. I never heard anybody growing up saying, he's a hell of a violin player. I never heard that. But fiddle, you know, because a violin doesn't fit like bluegrass music or country music, but a fiddle does. It's the same instrument, right? Same instrument, but you never even hear it called a violin down south unless you get into like the classical music background with it. Then you may hear it. So this match is what now?
Jeff Hardy defeats Raven in a 6 sides of steel tables match in 12 minutes. So not only do you have the cage gimmick, but you have a tables gimmick on top of that.
All right. I saw part of this because when you send it to me, remember I told you one time, a 2-hour show, I do a critique on 2 hours of SmackDown every Friday night on sportskita.com and Facebook. But that's 2 hours. This pay-per-view was 3 hours. So when you're trying to watch it back, that's 3 hours that is a valuable time actually kind of lost because it's not going to change. And so they did they take the cage down for this or no? They got in.
Nope, in the
It
cage.
was inside. That's what I thought you said. They took down the cage. I'm thinking, no, I don't think they took down the cage because taking it down takes about 10 minutes, full minutes. Put it back up takes about 15. So, and that's for all of you out there, you would-be cage builders and putter-upperers. What if you started a part-time business just putting cages up for wrestling matches and booked yourself out? You'd work like once every 3 months. I wouldn't call that a thriving business. But the match is what you'd expect a Raven Hardy match to be.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
And
wasn't bad.
Stuff. And again, it's a gimmick on top, stacked on top of another gimmick. And I think by this time now the people are kind of getting tired of the cage. And but that's what Dixie wanted, so we gave it to her. But the fans are saying, "Well, why did you give it to us? You ought to put her in there." Hey, that would have been something that could that would probably draw some people. Draw some people and didn't put Dixie in the cage. So, Dixie did work. She did get in the ring toward the end of the Bubba Dudley.
Yep, I remember that.
The Dudley brothers. She did. I will say one thing for Dixie. She had more cojones than I would have, because she got power bombed through a table by Devon, which I think took a lot of courage on her part. I will say that, because I wouldn't do it. Of course, it's Bubba taking the fall. He's protecting her with her head between his legs. Hey, that sounded a little sexual, didn't it? I take it back. I mean, she was positioned in a way to where her head wouldn't hit the table, and it's all Devon's body breaking the table. But still, she's 10 feet in the air, and it's scary. I mean, you got to really trust a person to allow them to do it. But I'm sure what Bubba did, he guaranteed you won't be hurt. And the thing was that I think she liked him anyway. And after that, now she's kind of a wrestler herself, a wrestleress. She was a knockout kinda. So I think that's probably her most fondest memory of the wrestling business, other than maybe losing $1 million. No, I don't think they lost any money. But her going through the table, it surprised me. I think it surprised everybody else. Because you just don't see that anymore. But I don't know how I got on Dixie. What's the match we were talking about?
We were talking about tables match. You said Dixie went through a table.
Yeah, I did do that. Oh, we were talking about Raven and
Jeff. Yep.
Bubba. Yeah. So, but anyway, not Raven and Bubba. Raven and
Hardy.
Jeff. I got it. Brother, I've been hit on the head a couple 100,000 times. So, and I have my own theory about brain damage. And people say, okay, let's go back. You remember people just using chairs over and over and over. And people were saying they kind of scrambled their brains, but nobody listened. It only takes one time. And I knew a pro football player. He told me that, and he was still playing at the time. And if I can think of his name, which I probably won't, you'll know who I'm talking about. He played for the New York Giants, and he wrestled a little bit in the off season. But he told me he was an offensive guard, I think. And he said every time he'd go head helmet to head with somebody, he would go out just for a split second. Not enough to fall down, but he would come back and he could tell he went out, which is actually a crazy thing to hear. And I'm thinking, well, why are you still? He was still playing. I think he was in his last year when I talked. And this is back in the 70s. You know, even the helmet safety wasn't up to what it is now. But I'm gonna find that name and send it to you, and you'll know who I'm talking about. All right, who's next?
AMW, America's Most Wanted, defeated Team Canada, Eric Young and Petey Williams in a strap match, also in the cage, for the TNA or NWA World Tag Team Championship. They retained in 14 minutes.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's a lot of ass whipping to take 14 minutes with the belt.
Mm-hmm.
So again, a gimmick. I mean, we should have called the pay-per-view a gimmick on top of a gimmick. That's what we should have called it. Sometimes if you call it what it is, you're more truthful in advertising. And they did some decent stuff. I mean, the guys, I don't have any animosity or any. They worked their butts off. They worked very, very hard. But sometimes I think after you have 6 or 7 cage matches, I think the shine's about worn off on the cage. You can only do so much with what you're given. But I think the guys made as much out of it as they can. So, and creative had to take it on this one. And I know where all the cage concept came from, but the finishes, I can't say. I don't even remember any match on here that I kind of aged it. I may have done the AJ Abyss match. I think maybe, possibly, could be. I just need to find the word that I can like distance myself from it. But the match with the tag match with the Canadians and AMW, America's Most Wanted, still a decent match for what it was. And speaking of that, James Storm, who I love to death, great guy. And there's a little bit of history with me and James. When he was growing up, he grew up around Nashville, and that's where I kind of not broke in, but kind of really understood. I was understanding the biz at that time, and he's and I may have said this before. He showed me a picture from the National Fairgrounds taken on Saturday night of me and James when he was like, I don't know, 10 years old. And he said, and he told me, he said, man, you were my favorite. So, but he just signed to be in a movie called, I can't remember the name of it. But he's actually looking a lot more like an actor now. So, and he's doing good. He's doing really good. I'm proud for him. Okay, next match.
Christopher Daniels, defending his X Division championship, defeats Elix Skipper, 16 minutes. Pretty good match.
Oh, great match. Good match. But these guys in this match, what made it better is they kind of forgot the cage. The cage just become a backdrop that they didn't use because there was no need to use the cage in a match like this at all. Especially at the time they were on late in the card. So whatever it probably has been, you could do in a cage has probably been done, maybe. If I remember correctly, they may have used the cage once, but they didn't depend on it because their style is dependent upon their work inside the ring and not another outside influence, if that makes sense. So they had a good match. Skipper was always good, and I think he should have actually been a bigger star than what he was. And a lot of guys, and I've heard guys say this, where he was in TNA but they didn't get used well or something. Well, if you look at WWE, they let some of these guys go almost a whole year without doing anything with them. Uh,
Yep.
let's take a girl that Selena girl. What's her name? Vega.
Yep. Selena Vega.
Selena Vega. She got beat every week on SmackDown for almost, I don't know, it was months and months and months and months, and then turned around and made her queen of the ring. So that's how. That's not how the wrestling business should work, but that's how WWE has it work. Has it
Yep.
working sometimes, and they do that for a purpose. They can say, "Hey, if you don't like what you're doing, hey, look what we did with Selena Vega. We beat her for 9 months in a row, then turned around and made her queen of the ring." See, it really doesn't affect their money because, especially when they were not even running house shows, it helps probably pay them. But say somebody signs a contract for, let's say, I mean, we couldn't imagine this back in my day, 500 grand a year. Well, of course, they're paying all their expenses out of that. And if they're working on house shows, they get paid for the house shows. But uh, you got all your gimmick money in there. You got all your merchandise money included, and your appearance money, and but they can send you to do something else that you really don't get paid for, but you do get paid for. But you actually, it's all adding up to pay you $500,000 a year. So if you take some of those guys and you pay them 500,000 a year or 300,000 a year, or 200,000 is coming from gimmick money. So they're not really losing anything. I mean, they're not even padding anybody's pocket because you're actually earning that money. And if you have 2 million people, fans, of course you won't have that many in a merchandise pool, but you'll probably have a couple 100,000 who buy merchandise on a regular basis. Then after 3 years, that fan base turns over. Then now if the person is still there, now they hit a whole new, I guess, they hit gold in another area with a new set of fans. And I know I'm rambling here, but that's how they make their money. So if they made money in their last quarter without even running house shows, that some of these house shows may even be on the losing end because with travel costs and hotel costs and all that has gone up. I mean, it's rare that because let me ask you a question. When the pandemic first happened, did you think that was going to spell misery for WWE?
Definitely, but it was the exact opposite.
And it was the exact opposite. So it's surprised me. Wait a minute, and there is a rumor floating around that AEW is on the verge of losing money if they're not already losing money. Is that possible?
Oh yeah, they're definitely losing.
How is it possible?
Supposedly
I mean,
he spent so much money in the video
these,
game and extra stuff like that, and payroll too. The payroll's crazy.
well, I have a hard time believing that. What's he paying CM Punk?
Supposedly $3 million a
I
year.
mean, making as much money as he did in WWE. He may be making more, but how many like that can he pay? And Daniel Bryan.
Supposedly, I think $2 million a year, something
So
like that.
what
It
do
was
you
in the millions for him.
That's crazy. They're just doing TV. I don't get it. Somehow I'm missing the financial slant of of what's going on there. All right, the last match. What's the last match?
Second to last match. Team Nash, BG James, DDP, and Sean Waltman defeat Team Jarrett, Jeff Jarrett, Monty Brown, and the Outlaw in a lethal lockdown match. 15 minutes, 30 seconds. Team Nash.
Who was the outlaw?
Billy Gunn.
Okay. Probably a decent match, but yet it's a cluster F.
Yep.
In the cage, those guys have nowhere to go except at each other. And it went 15 minutes. Well, I'm not. I watched the tape back, but I think I hate to say this. I think I fast forwarded through it just a little bit because I get bored very easily. So the intent was there, the effort was there. It's just the success I don't think was there because it's not a match, and none of these matches were matches you would look back on, especially 15 years later, and say, "Wow, man, that was a really great match." It don't have to change the landscape of anything, but it can be a worthwhile match to watch. But yet this card was just a lackluster card. And see, when I first heard the idea of doing pay-per-views, monthly pay-per-views, it was similar to a like in your house type experiment, right? Remember In Your House when they started that? And I thought then, I said, of course, I'm forgetting the financial aspect of it, but In Your House, I'm sure a lot of people took that because that was in the early days of pay-per-view. People were taking pay-per-views to get something that free TV didn't give them. And I think that's what WWE forgot and TNA forgot because they were getting these same matches on free TV. So why would they go out and spend $34.99 or $34.95, pay $35 or $40 for a product that they were getting free every Wednesday night? Or when was it on? I mean, they went head to head to WWE at one time and got their butt kicked. But what was the first night they went on? Thursdays?
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah, Thursday.
Can't hear. Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah.
So, but it was a match that I don't think it changed anything, and it certainly didn't. It wasn't good enough to override some of the earlier matches. The last match was
AJ Styles defeats Abyss in the cage for a number one contendership to the NWA Championship, which will happen at Hard Justice. So AJ beats Abyss to fight Jarrett at Hard Justice, and Tito Ortiz is going to be the referee.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least it was building towards something that was fairly decent. Let me say one thing about AJ and Abyss, and I've said this before. Abyss, and I've called him an idiot savant in wrestling, which means he obsesses with things sometimes. And I'm sure if everybody had Abyss's attitude in this business, well, first of all, I think all the agents would kill themselves because they just go, boom, get it over with. But he would take a project or a match with AJ, and AJ kind of does the same thing, except he's driven, but he's not driven to the degree that Abyss is. And Abyss will take, if he knew this match was 2 weeks out, well, the whole time spending up to this pay-per-view, he's thinking about this match. And AJ too. So you put these two together, and the match was pretty decent, pretty good. Sometimes maybe better than it had a right to be. But these guys are two of the and AJ, you know how good he is, and Abyss being a big guy, and he used to do things that little guys did or smaller guys, and I tell him stop doing that because it's not believable. You're 320 pounds. You don't do stuff like that. And I used to get on to him, and I would tell him stop doing things for the dressing room. The dressing room doesn't buy one ticket. They don't buy one pay-per-view. They don't buy any merchandise at all. So stop working for the dressing room and start working for the cheap seat guys way up there at the top of the arena. Except of course the Impact Zone arena wasn't that big, but he understood me, and he got to think. He actually put another filter in his thinking about how he should produce himself. And the old saying goes, you can't produce yourself. You can to a degree, but you have to have a final word on that to see if the final word agrees with it. So this match here was fairly decent. So, and it was leading somewhere. Any more questions?
You want to take some fan questions?
Do we have any fans?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's take a few. Put it up there.
Dutch, I was wondering if you talk about your time at Nick Goulas's promotion. Your number one fan, Lisa Smith.
Well, Lisa, you're showing your age. Well, to the uninitiated, Nick Goulas ran a territory which actually became a part of the old Memphis territory later on because of professional and business problems that accumulated over the time, and it was a territory known basically for starting young guys and using older guys. I mean young guys. I'm saying like 20-year-olds, and older guys 45 and up, because the younger guys couldn't. Excuse me. Younger guys couldn't. It's hard for younger guys without any experience to get a start in the business, and Nick Goulas would give them a start. And one of the reasons is because he wasn't one of the better payoff men in the business. Actually, he's one of the worst. Unless he needed you, then he'd pay you. He wasn't poor. He was a wealthy guy, but he was in his DNA was cheapness, totally. So, and like I said, he used a lot of older guys who were having trouble getting booked. So I started there, and the booker there was the old assassin, Tom Ernesto, who actually became my mentor, and he was a brilliant mind when it came to booking. And I used to ride him down. I used to be his driver, really. That's what I basically was. But I'd drive and he'd talk, and he started teaching me about, to book something, how you go about it, what you do, and I learned a lot with Nick, being with the Nick Goulas promotions, and they ran towns like Chattanooga, Tennessee. They ran Nashville. Back in the day, they ran Memphis. They ran Birmingham, Louisville. And of course, part of that, the northern part of that, became Jarrett Promotions later on, because Jarrett's mother worked in the office, and she knew how much theft was going on the promotion side. Of course, I'm sure she told Jerry, and Jerry decided after a while that he would branch out and open his own company, and he did, and he had a lot of success with it. So, and Nick Goulas is gone now, but he paid so poorly one time. I may have told you this, John, and he used a lot of Mexican guys too, because they would get in the country and they were wrestlers, and they didn't make enough money to leave, so they were
Wow.
stuck here. And it's not funny, but two Mexican wrestlers told him one time, "Miss Unique, I only make $70 that week," and he went, "God damn, boy, then what you make's what you say." And I never
Wow.
will forget that. So I learned a lot from him. Give me another question. Thank you, Lisa.
Do you remember Bill White? It's Nathan White's father. Did you ever work with Bill White?
I do remember Bill White. I wasn't around him much, didn't know him well, but I think I ran across him a couple of times. And I wish I had more to tell you, Nathan, but I don't. But I do remember him, and I always remembered he had respect in the dressing room, and was actually good in the ring. So that's all I can hand you right now.
What are your feelings on Vince Russo?
Well, I think I've said said enough about Vince. I don't dislike Vince. I'm not like Jimmy Cornette, hate him, but and Vince, I always liked him. I could make trips with Vince, and we could laugh and we could carry on because just because I didn't agree, and he didn't agree with me either. So what we had a philosophical difference about about booking and about telling a story. And remember, I told you in this episode here at the start of it, because he was famous for taking a gimmick, which is say, an all cage battle royal, and then turning it into all kind of gimmick matches inside the cage. And I call that stacking a gimmick on top of another gimmick, which was, I don't know if it was neat or not. I don't think you would get another buy out of this pay per view than what we got. I mean, you got what you got. You ought to be. If it got 30,000 buys, that would surprise me very much. But Vince, I'll say one thing about him: he is really a hard worker, and I mean he'll work 24 hours. But you can work, but you may not get a lot done. And I think he actually worked a lot more than what his results showed. But personally, I like Vince. Philosophically, we just disagree. Don't mean I'm gonna go and take a baseball bat and hit him. It's just we just disagree on how to book a wrestling card. So next question.
Why didn't Team Page versus Team Jarrett main event, aka Team Nash versus Team Jarrett? Why did that not become the main event? Why AJ versus Abyss?
Because AJ and Abyss would we had even the people in the Jarrett Nash match understood that AJ and Abyss would be better. So what you don't want to do, this is the worst thing they could have done. Who's this jabroni Larry Francis? Who's that guy? Oh, he's our buddy. Oh, I'll tell you why, Larry. Because if they'd have followed AJ and Abyss, that's the last thing they wanted to do. Because they would follow a really, really good match with a mediocre match, and it would have made the mediocre match look worse by comparison. You you ever hear? And Randy Savage used to do this all the time. He was when he first started. He would go out there in Mid Atlantic, Charlotte, and Virginia, and Carolina territory, and he'd be on early with somebody, and they'd tear the house down. And then he'd come back and he'd say, "Hey," and whoever was next, and he'd throw something at them like, "Hey, follow that." And people don't want to follow a hot match, but that's that's what would have happened here. AJ and Abyss, their match would probably be or have been a lot better than what that 6 man turned out to be. Rule number one: try not to follow a hot match, or your match needs to be hotter, and sometimes that's not possible. What's this
Dutch,
one say?
Great memories of you back in the 80s, USWA and the Louisville Gardens. Any memories you can share?
Well, I thought of this. I thought of this story today. It was me, Jared the King Lawler, who was a heat magnet, and David Schultz. We were all teamed up under as a little group. Lawler kind of managed us and worked too. He called it Lawler's Army. And I've written a story about this. So we was in an angle with two Indians. I don't know if I can be politically correct in even saying two Indians now, but it was Chief Thundercloud and Chief uh, Danny something. I can't even remember his name, but it was two Indians, and they went into the ring and they wore the big Indian headdress. They looked great. So and of course when they started their comeback, they go do 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 do, and that got the people wound up. Well, we got in Louisville and it was a Tuesday night. I remember this. And we went on last, and it was a pretty well heated up, contest going on. And they had this little manager, and his name was Chewy, Chuy is how he spelled his name. But he was a handsome young boy, and of course the little girls loved him, and the mothers loved him, and even the young guys, they wanted to kind of be him, and the fathers, they liked him too. So we ran the gamut of, of the audience. They liked this young guy, and his job was to stand outside the ring. And when his daddy, and they didn't really know that, but his daddy was Thundercloud, and his other guy, Danny Little Bear, and he would start beating that drum, doom 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 doom, and you start hearing that, and then you start getting with it, and then when they make the comeback, it blew the roof off because we timed it. Of course, they know when we start flying around, and I forgot the finish. I think we got beat. Either I got beat or David got beat, probably me. And of course, now the crowd is happy. We've given them a happy ending to a long kind of struggle. And of course, but no, us being dastardly heels, we couldn't leave it alone. So we attacked one of them, beat him down the ring, threw him outside, got the other, we beating the crap out of him. He's bleeding. And little Chewy, here he comes. And he threw his body over his daddy like he was going to protect his dad, but just himself. And we stopped, and we just looked at Chewy and looked at each other, and then looked back. Then we looked at the people, and now the people get the idea. They're saying, don't you even think about touching that. Too late. We beat the living crap out of him. Then he started bleeding, and that's when the chairs started coming. They were up almost in the ring. They actually come. I don't think we had rails. We had like a rope, but they come all the way up on four sides and were snatching at us. And now we all have to stop. Now we got to go back to back because some of them got up on the edges and we was pushing them down. But if we'd have made one mistake, if we'd have went down and one guy come in there, they were all coming in. And this was about a standoff, I don't know, for at least a minute the security couldn't handle them, and here come the cops in. And we probably stayed in that ring a good 10 minutes after this match was over because we couldn't get out. And then when we went out, it was a fight all the way to the back. People were punching through the cops. We were punching through the cops. They were punching at us. We were punching at them. I remember one guy's head come through. I don't know how his head come in. I popped him. He had glasses on. It went everywhere. But the thing is, I got to come back. We all got to come back, and they know that. but nothing happened by coming back. But I do remember a cop come up and tell me, he said, "The guy you hit last week?" I said, "Yeah." "You broke his glasses." I said, "Yeah, and what else?" He said, "He wants you to pay for them." I said, "Tell him to go get out. I ain't paying for shit. He shouldn't have been bothering me." And that's the last I heard of that. But sometimes, as a wrestler, sometimes you can, and I'm sure every wrestler who's ever been a main eventer back in the day can tell you at some point in their career where, you know that old saying on TV, this is when you realized that you'd effed up. That was exactly what I felt. I went, uh-oh, we have their attention now, but,
Yep.
and that's, and if you really think about it, that's how the lynchings down south used to happen because they get a crowd, somebody does something else. I mean, it wasn't that drastic, but sometimes those mobs have a mind of their own and they take over. So we got Alabama, but it was hairy because what happens, you don't know what can happen because all of a sudden, somebody open up a knife, all of a sudden they just go straight in, and you never know where it comes from. But it could be, you can actually die. I'm trying to think that maybe the people in Louisville weren't that diabolical, but a lot of wrestlers have been cut in situations just like that, and I didn't want to be one of them. So that was one of the stories that I remember. I have several more, a lot more. What's our next question?
Ivan Santos, what does Dutch think of Invader at 76 challenging Manny Fino for the IWA title? Your old buddy, the Invader.
I don't think about it much. He's 76 years old. He should be. I mean, he should not have been actually. He should have. Well, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Doesn't work. And that's a whole story on its own. How he got out of the Bruiser Brody uh, debacle. I say debacle. Where did that word come from? Debacle. Because I've told people that I knew that he wasn't going to get convicted. I didn't want to believe it, but here you got a, and what really convicted Invader? He didn't say he didn't do it. He said he was self-defense. Wrestling at the time had Memphis style ratings, like they had primetime ratings on Saturday, like Memphis wrestling used to have, and everybody knew who he was. I mean, wrestling, they have three sports in Puerto Rico, and it's dog racing, horse racing, dog fights, and wrestling. And politics, they have four. I mean, politics is almost a sport there. But they painted Bruiser Brody as a crazy, insane wrestler who comes out swinging a chain, and he's an American. And then Invader, who was a Puerto Rican and was like everybody knew him on that island. So when it went to trial, I don't know if everybody knows this, but they debated deliberated for about 30 minutes. Then they came back and with a not guilty verdict. They never said he was innocent because innocent is not a verdict. It's either guilty or not guilty. And they found him not guilty. Therefore, the case is closed forever because you can't try him again because of the double jeopardy clause in the Constitution, I guess. But and it's an incident I don't care to remember. But as far as him wrestling, it'll draw a little bit. That's about it because nobody's going to take a 76-year-old man seriously. This is like his last match, and I hope people realize that. It should have been years ago his last match. So, next question.
Favorite promo you did in Memphis, face or heel?
Oh, I used to do promos face to face with Lawler. That's when we would actually argue because Jerry Jarrett told me one time, he said, Dutch, you are a hell of an arguer. So we'd get Lawler out there, and he'd say something, and I would say something, then he'd say something, and there was no pausing. We were just debating back and forth quick. So I liken it to you going through the channels and you hear two guys, they're going back and forth, and you said, and it's on a wrestling show, but it's in such a way that it doesn't sound like a scripted promo. It sounds like a real argument, which in essence it was, because he was arguing this. He said, Dutch, you talk about having friends in wrestling. I am not your friend. You don't have friends. And I'd made that interview before, that you don't have friends in wrestling. You have associates. That's all you got. Then he turned it around on me and said, no, you don't have friends, and you're an associate, but you're not my friend. And I said, well, blah, he's talking about how I beat him, and because I'm probably the only one in Memphis history who actually beat Lawler twice straight up. I mean, he's been beaten before, but usually it's outside interference or a gimmick or something else. But I've actually pinned him. I pinned him one time with a sunset flip, and another time I forgot what I did, but I ended up beating him. But and it was in this angle that I did with him. It took 6 or 7 weeks, may have taken 2 months, but I only wrestled him 3 times in that span. But they meant something. So and even in one of my last matches with Lawler, they call it the last sellout of Memphis, so that's what I call it. It's the last sellout of Memphis. It was me and Lawler versus Bill Dundee and Buddy Landell, and it was a Texas death match, and where we went 26 falls. And I still remember that match well, because the fans, and they were really with the match. And we were only supposed to go 8 falls. Okay. And we got in there, and 8 falls went by, and we were getting set up to go for another fall. And I told Lawler, I said, I thought this was it. He said, oh, no, let's go some more. I said, oh, okay. Then now we go 10 falls. Okay. Now we go 12 falls, and I asked Lawler, how long are we going to go? He said, I don't know. Do you get tired? Till we get tired, I guess. Are you tired? I said, no. And let's keep going. So when we hit 12 falls, 13 falls, now the people set up like, wow, this is different. They would have expected 8 falls. They would have expected 6 falls. But now we're at 14. So now we're in uncharted territory. And when we got to 17, 18, they're going, we're actually seeing history here. They realize that they're seeing something that they've never seen before. And finally, when we got to the 26th fall and that was over, the people got up and they walked away knowing they had seen something that night that they'll probably never see again. And I think the 26 falls is the most falls ever in a match, to my knowledge. I mean, but we actually have video footage of that. So if anybody can show us a match with 27 falls, then we'll relinquish the title. So that's just another Memphis story off the top of my head. Next question. Any?
Well, we're at the over the hour mark, so I don't know if you. I know. Yeah, can you believe that?
I can't believe it, because boy, time flies. You're having fun. So anyway, I guess we're a bit ado at this time. So on April the 7th, which is, well, we'll have another one of these before next Saturday. May the 7th, I'm sorry. I think I'm in, where am I at, John? The 80s
New Jersey.
convention?
New Jersey, 80s Wrestling Con, New Jersey.
And what town is that?
Morristown, New Jersey.
Next Saturday, May the 7th, I'll be in Morristown, New Jersey, for the 80s WrestleCon.
Yep.
And come and see me. Take a picture with me. Talk to me. Just don't touch my beard. Don't touch my mustache. We have a big fight. I don't want to go to jail in New Jersey. But and you know, when I go to these Comic Cons, I actually see a lot of the guys I used to work with. But even better than that, I see the fans, and the fans to me are more enjoyable than seeing some friends I've had because I don't know. I just enjoy talking to fans, and anything can happen. They're new to me, and they are. I mean, I'm new to them to talk to. They know who I am, but I enjoy these Comic Cons. I mean, these Wrestle Cons. I really do. So next Saturday, and on May 14th, a week later, I'm in, I think, East St. Louis for the Bruiser Brody Memorial Show, and that should be a good one. And meet and greets open at 5, and the doors open at 6. Show starts at 7, and I'll be there for that. That should be a good one. And Bruiser Brody's wife Barbara, whom I've never met personally, talked to her, but I've never met her personally. She'll be there. Plus, I think a couple of my movie making friends, Sean and David, they will be there, and we'll be talking some things. But I think it's I enjoy making these shows. I can't move like I used to because I'm expecting surgery. I think maybe in August on my knee. And you didn't even know that, did you, John?
No.
Well, I am, and I should have had surgery 2 years ago. 2 years, but COVID kept pushing me back. You know, because I couldn't go because they had the COVID breakout would start back up. No, we got to cancel you. Got to cancel you. So if they're canceling elective knee surgery, what if somebody needed a heart attack or some surgery, for cancer surgery or something? Then no telling how many people died from that. So, and the reason I pulled back is because I was afraid I'd go in there and actually catch COVID and die. But I didn't want to knock anybody else out of a surgery that was more pressing than mine. So, but anyway, you can find me on Facebook at Dutch Mantel, straight up on Facebook, and you can find me on Twitter as Dirty D Mantel, and I think you can find me on Instagram as Dirty Dutchman 1. And you can email me, dirtydutchmantel@gmail.com. And usually I write back. A guy wrote me today and he said and John, he talked about you too. He said, you and John make a crappy day. My crappy days go by faster. So Hades having a crappy day, but if we can help him get through it, more power to him, and I'm glad we can do that for him. So hey, until next week, fans, this is the Dirty Dutchman, along with my co-host, Dr. John, who, for the public record, I gave him that name, Dr. John. Didn't I, John?
Yes,
I just called you Dr. John because you look like a doctor at some point.
Thank you.
Not really, but Doctor, I always liked that name anyway. So we'll see you next week, Thursday night, and hope everybody stays safe. Don't catch COVID, and we'll see you then. We the people.